Okay, we are going to move on here now to part 2 of our notes dealing with the coordinate plane. Today we're going to focus on reflecting points. Okay, so make sure that you have your paper and your pencil and follow along with me. Here we go. First off, what are the coordinates of point A? So here we have point A. If we were to start at the origin, we would have to go to -2 and then up 3. So the coordinates are going to be -2, 3. Remember, we separate those numbers with a comma and we put parentheses around them. Okay, which quadrant is point A in? Well, that is quadrant 2. Okay, little review there. Now, we want to reflect point A across the x-axis. So when we reflect points, it's similar to what a reflection is. Okay, you guys have all heard of a reflection. Like if you look in a mirror, you see your reflection. So if you were to look in a mirror, you're going to look the same. You're the same shape, you're the same size, but if you were wearing a shirt or hat and it had words on it, those are going to be flipped or backwards, okay, or the opposite direction. So a reflection is similar but opposite. Okay, so we're going to see how that comes into play here when we reflect a point. Okay, so we're going to reflect point A across the x-axis. Remember, the x-axis is our horizontal number line, so I'm just going to label it here. That one's x. The vertical number line is y. So if we reflect it across the x-axis, that means that point should jump over the x-axis, but it needs to stay the same distance away from the x and the y-axis. Okay, so that means that A is at -2, 3. So the reflection jumping over the x-axis, okay, is going to bring it down here into quadrant 3. And we're still going to go over 2 to the left, but now I'm going to go down 3. So our new point is going to be down here. It told us to label that point B, and the new coordinates are -2, -3. Okay, so we still went to the left 2 spaces. For A, we went up 3, but for the reflection, we went down 3, okay? And like we said, we're in quadrant 3 down here. Okay, now let's go back to our original point A up here in quadrant 2, and now we're going to reflect this over the y-axis. So it needs to jump over the y-axis, which means it's going to end up over here in quadrant 1. And just like before, it needs to stay the same distance away. So if we start at the origin, we're going to move 2 units to the right, and then we'll go up 3 units. So when we reflect point A over the y-axis, it's going to end up at 2, 3. Okay, so the new coordinates are 2, 3, and that is located in quadrant 1. All right, let's keep going here. So just practice some more. So we're going to graph point A at -4, -2.5. So start at the origin, find -4 on the x-axis, -2.5 on the y-axis. That means that point's going to be right here. We're going to label it A. That's quadrant 3. We want to reflect it across the x-axis. Again, here is x. Here is y. So if we reflect A over the x-axis, it should jump over the x-axis and end up somewhere up here in quadrant 2. Okay, so to get to A, we had to go over 4 and down 2.5. The reflection is going to be over 4, but up 2.5. So we're going to be up here now. Okay, it didn't tell us what to label this, so I'm going to label it A prime. Okay, you see that new symbol that we have there? Kind of looks like an apostrophe, but it just tells us that we've taken one point and we've moved it, or we've done something to that point. Okay, so this is A after the reflection. So you just put that little apostrophe there. It's read A prime. And the coordinates are going to be -4, 2.5. Okay? All right, number 4, reflected across the y-axis. What are the coordinates? So I want you to go back to the original point A down here in quadrant 3, and we're going to reflect it over the y-axis now. So we should end up over here in quadrant 4. Okay, so we went over 4, down 2.5. Now I'm going to go to the right 4, down 2.5. So the new ordered pair is going to be 4, negative 2.5. Okay, and we are in quadrant 4. Reflecting points. All right, so for this last one, I'm going to let you do this one on your own here. It says reflect the parallelogram Qrst across the y-axis. Okay, so remember this is the y-axis, and then you're going to write the new coordinates. So when you reflect an entire shape like this, you want to do 1 point at a time. So Q is at 2, negative 2. The new point Q will be at negative 2, negative 2. And then label it Q prime. Okay, and you can make a list over here of what your new points are going to be. Okay, and then you could do R, S, and T. Okay, do 1 point at a time, write their new locations. Go ahead, hit pause, and then hit play again to check your answers. Okay, turn your paper over to the back side. We have a little bit more. Okay guys, we're going to start out back here. We're going to fill in this table at the top. So I give you the original point in the first column. You're going to reflect point A across the x-axis, and you're going to write what the new ordered pair is here. And then in the third column, you're going to go back to your original point and reflect it over the y-axis, and then write the ordered pair in this third column. Okay, let's do the first one together, and then I'll let you do the other two on your own. So point A is at negative 2, 3. So that's going to be from the origin, negative 2, 3. Okay, over here in quadrant 2, I'm going to write this as just point A at negative 2, 3. Okay, now if we reflect that point across the x-axis, okay, x-axis is your horizontal, that means we have to jump over that. So I'm going to end up down here in quadrant 3. All right, so to get there, we're going to go over 2 and down 3. Okay, so I'm going to call this A prime, and then I'm going to write the coordinates over here. So A prime is going to be located at negative 2, negative 3. Okay, and then you go back to the original point A up here in quadrant 2. Okay, go back to your original point A, and we're going to now reflect it over the y-axis. So it should end up over here in quadrant 1. So starting from the origin, I have to go to the right 2 spaces, and then I'm going to go up 3. Okay, I'm going to call this one A prime prime because it is after a second move. And then the coordinates for that point are going to be 2, 3. Okay, so you guys are going to do B and C, and if you have maybe colored pencils or can do them in different colors, feel free to do that. Pause the video, do those, and then hit play to check and see if we agree. Okay, take a couple seconds and make sure that your numbers match my numbers in the table. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and do that. But now we're going to take a look at just the numbers, okay? So if we had the ordered pairs, but we didn't have a coordinate plane to graph these on, how could we determine if a point is reflected across the x-axis or the y-axis? Okay, and we can do that by just looking at our numbers. So let's see if we can find some patterns or things that they have in common. Okay, let's first focus on how do the coordinates change when a point is reflected across the x-axis. Okay, so follow along with me here. I'm looking at just the first 2 columns. So when a point is reflected over the x-axis, A went from being at negative 2, positive 3, to negative 2, negative 3. Point B was at 4, negative 5, and the reflection was 4, positive 5. C was at negative 2, negative 2, and the reflection was at negative 2, positive 2. So do you see how the x-coordinate, the first number, stayed the same whenever we did the reflection over the x-axis? And the y-coordinate, we went from 3 to -3, -5 to +5, -2 to +2. So those are opposites. So the y-coordinate changed to the opposite. Okay, so we're going to write that down here. So when a point is reflected across the x-axis, we're going to say the x-coordinate stays the same, y-coordinate goes opposite. Okay, now let's look at what happens whenever the point is reflected over the y-axis. Okay, how do the coordinates change? So if we're looking at the numbers, point A went from being at -2, 3 to being at 2, 3. Okay, point B went from 4, -5 to -4, -5. And point C went from -2, -2 to being at 2, -2. So this time, when a point is reflected over the y-axis, the y-coordinate stays the same and the x-coordinate is the opposite. Okay, so let's type here or write again on this line. Okay, I'm going to say the x-coordinate is opposite the y-coordinate stays the same. Okay, so to kind of summarize that, we're saying that when a point is reflected across the x-axis, the x-coordinate stays the same and y goes to the opposite. If a point is reflected over the y-axis, then the y-coordinate stays the same and the x-coordinate is the opposite. Okay, whoops. So I want you to remember these things, and we're going to try to memorize them, and we're going to do it enough where I think that you will memorize this. But if not, it's always okay to find a coordinate plane or to draw a quick coordinate plane to help you to figure this out as well. Okay, so let's try this. Let's try focusing on just the numbers and seeing if we can figure this out. Okay, take a look at question number 3. It says, what are the new coordinates of point M, which is located at -4530, after it is reflected across the x-axis? Okay, so we just learned that when a point is reflected across the x-axis, the x-coordinate stays the same and y goes to the opposite. Okay, so point M is at -45 for its x-coordinate, and it has 30 as the y-coordinate. So we want the opposite of that, which would be -30. Okay, very good. Number 4, what are the new coordinates of point M? Again, -4530, if it were reflected across the y-axis. So this time, we're going to keep the y-coordinate the same of -30, and we're going to do the opposite of the x-coordinate. So we're going to have 4530. All right, and then question number 5, if a point went from -2, 3 to 2, 3, was it reflected across the x or the y axis? So I would ask myself, which coordinate stayed the same? Did the x-coordinate stay the same, or did the y-coordinate stay the same? In this case, it was the y-coordinate. See how we have 3 for both of them? So that tells me it was reflected over the y-axis. Okay, you guys are ready to go practice. Good luck.